Well, the Manny Wilkins era has officially begun in Tempe as the Arizona State Sun Devils top the NAU Lumberjacks 44-13 to kick off the 2016 campaign. Welcome into HouseOfSparky.com. I'm Ryan Bafaloukos, joined by Kaelen Jones. Kaelen, we'll start with Manny Wilkins. All eyes were on number 5. How would you grade his overall performance this evening?
Well, I mean, all things considered, Ryan, I don't think that he had a bad performance at all. He went 20-27 tonight. He only had one turnover, and really it was kind of a initial mistake where they kind of threw him into the fire, so to speak.
It was early. It was very early.
Exactly. And so I don't think that he did too bad tonight. I think especially as a runner, he proved that he's going to make this offense really dynamic. We saw it for the first series when we saw Kaelen Demarion Richard and Manny Wilkins on the field at the same time. I think that is going to pose a lot of trouble for opposing defenses down the road.
ASU came out 7 consecutive rushes to start this football game. 44 yards. They go down. They score right away. It's 7-0. Chip Lindsey, second game calling plays for ASU. He was up in the box. What are your thoughts on Chip Lindsey and maybe the position that he put Manny Wilkins in and the ASU offense in tonight?
He put them in a good position. So the first drive, you pointed out, 7 consecutive runs to start off the game. All of that split zone set where you're kind of going read option. So, all the action going on in the backfield between Balaj, Richard, and Wilkins, like we pointed out, that's going to pose issues for the defenses going down the road. But I think the initial series after that, where Wilkins threw the pick, they went from going to that split zone where you have 2 running backs in the backfield straight into a trip sponge formation where you have Tim White on the outside, and he threw a quick pass to Tim White. The initial pass right after that was a deeper pass, and that's where Wilkins made the mistake of trying to read downfield. So I think as far as play calling is concerned, throughout the middle of the game, I think that I think they were still trying to figure out exactly what they were going to do with Wilkins and how they were going to kind of ease him in, especially when Demarion Richard got that injury in the middle of the game. You're asking Kaelen Balaj, who's more of an off-tackle runner, to run inside. I think you'll see a lot more incorporation of him running off jet sweeps like we saw during later on in the game. But I think the play calling wasn't too bad. There was an assortment of deep shots and as well as a mixing of the RPO stuff and the inside zone stuff. But again, I think that with Chip Lindsey, you weren't seeing the entire day. I think we talked about that during the game. I don't think Chip Lindsey came in showing off his jack, his queen, his king, and his ace. I think that he was just testing some of the plays out against some real opposition for the first time this year. And I think that resulted in, it's kind of a sluggish start. Later on in the game, once they started getting things that they knew would get going, that's when you saw the score kind of reflect in the final result.
Let's shift over to the ASU defense. They were already missing Layu. They were missing Ami Latu. They're missing Salam Ofiso. Then you lose Christian Same in the first quarter. Marcus Ball has the targeting penalty. He gets ejected in the third. They still only give up 13 points to a pretty good NAU offense that had scored 40 points in every home game last year. Who were some of your standouts on the ASU defense tonight?
Well, I mean, definitely Armand Perry. When you're talking about a guy who came in fired up, you're saying that I'm back running up against the camera and everything. He absolutely had a phenomenal game. I think DJ Calhoun was someone who impressed me out of that linebacking corps. I think Rennell Wren and Tashawn Smallwood, their run defense particularly, they did a great job defending against the run. But as far as standouts, I think that's really it. I think they did a really good job. All things considered, this is a great passing offense where you're talking about Case Cookis, Emmanuel Butler, who stands at 6'4", 220, for Gump Hayes and Kareem Orr, guys who are on the shorter side of the defensive back stature. They held their own when you look at their one-on-one matchups. Like I think we talked about, their one mistake was when they were in cover 3, and I think Graham talked about it after the game. They had a miscommunication at the back. But aside from that, despite giving up the 369, I think you're looking at the defense overall. They held NAU to only 1.6 yards per rush. And granted, they didn't have, I believe they only finished with 3 sacks and didn't record any until the fourth quarter. But when you look at what they did overall, they held a very explosive offense in check. And granted, it's an FCS opponent, but it's still a talented, explosive one. And, they bended but didn't break. And I think that's the biggest thing going into this year. You saw a lot more conservative play calling as far as 4-man rushes and, not too many aggressive blitzing schemes. Again, I think Graham is kind of holding his cards as well going up against Texas Tech, who has Pat Mahomes and that explosive offense going into next week. But I think you can overall, you should be impressed with what you saw from ASU's defense tonight.
The score will say it was 44-13, but NAU was in this football game for most of the contest. It was 10-3 at halftime, 10-6 in the third quarter. So give me a letter grade on this overall ASU performance. They're 1-0. What say you?
I give them B minus, and maybe that's a little generous. I think you go C plus B minus, somewhere in between there. But I think all things considered, like they pointed out after the game, Graham has an assortment of new coaches on his coaching staff. This is a team with a revamped offensive line, a first-year starter at quarterback, and like we talked about, there's a bunch of absences on defense going into this game. So all things considered, I think, ASU came in, they handled their business, they worked through what they needed to, and they ended up coasting away with the win. And, they worked on what they needed to. And I think fans can be, not necessarily confident going into Texas Tech, but understand that there's an understanding that between the coaches that they know how to get it done in order to get a win.
Looking ahead to next week, ASU hosts Texas Tech. It's their lone Power 5 opponent in the non-conference. What do you think is going to be the biggest key that you saw tonight that maybe ASU has to improve upon when they host the Red Raiders 1 week from tonight?
And that's definitely generating pressure on the quarterback. Obviously, they're a lot more conservative tonight. That's why Case Cookis was able to, kind of have free, clean pockets where he was going for 369 yards. But going into next week, granted, there's no Emmanuel Butler where you have a 6'4", 220 guy going up against your smaller corners on the outside every single play. But I think going into next week, you're definitely going to have to be a bit more consistent in getting after the passer. Pat Mahomes is definitely a better, creator and playmaker at the quarterback position. I think you pointed out today that he drew for over 400 yards in the first half against his opponent. So if ASU wants to have any shot against Texas Tech going into next week, they definitely have to be able to generate a lot more pressure, especially on the outside. Rennell Rentz, Tashawn Smallwood did a great job. DJ Calhoun particularly did well rushing the passer as well, but that's more up the middle. You need someone on the outside, that devil backer position. And I know everybody in Southern Devil Nation really wants someone to really step up there, but until someone really does, opposite JoJo Wicker, I'm not sure how else ASU can fix that, but they're going to need to in order to beat Texas Tech next week.
All right, the Sun Devils host the Red Raiders 7:30 a week from tonight. That's Kaelen Jones. I'm Ryan Bafaloukos for HouseOfSparky.com. We'll catch you next time.